Hi everyone, Sean Paul Ellis here from the Saturday Morning Cartoons Podcast. Remember, that's morning with a U. Some quick pre-show announcements pertaining to the following. A thank you, what's happening in December, and what's actually happening on today's episode. For our thank you, Thanksgiving is all about a time of showing thanks, and I want to thank all of you who are listening to this. You guys and gals are amazing, and I really appreciate all of your outreach and response on all the shows that we've had as of late. I'm very thankful for all of you, and it turns out that we have managed to actually reach 125,000 downloads for the show, in which this is just crazy, and I can't thank you guys enough for listening. Just ridiculous. Just all my love. Thank you guys. In December, we've got the following. We've got Gundam 0080. Yep, no clue why I let Charlie Visconage talk me into this. There is a Christmas episode that's evidently in the series, which is only 6 episodes long. We're going to have that coming out on December 3rd. December 10th, we have another interview. Very excited, and I think you're really going to dig this too, which means that we're also going to have another giveaway right before Christmas. December 17th, we're doing Rankin Bass Pinocchio's Christmas, which, oh man, I don't know. This one could be the make or break for all of Rankin Bass that's out there. Should be a lot of fun and coming to you right before Christmas. And then in January of 2019, which is crazy to say, we're going to be right back here with New Year's Nicktoons. So what is happening on today's episode? Everyone has to go through puberty. I know, everyone has to go through puberty, and all of our experiences are a wonderful combination of bizarre, awkward, satisfying, horrifying. It runs the entire gambit. That's right. We are watching the Netflix original series Big Mouth, and I'm joined by Isabel Galbraith and Alex Beard to talk about whether or not Big Mouth should be our new sex ed curriculum. All of that and more on today's episode, so now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you all the way from the pituitary gland, I'll be your awkward and self-conscious host, Sean Paul Ellis. Joining me today, sporting a solid unibrow and a smattering of wispy hair on his upper lip, we have DC-based actor Alex Beard.
Hey. How's everybody doing?
Thanks, Alex.
Sorry, I had to move my hairs off my lip for a second there
I
could talk.
They are very gross.
They're about 6 inches long. There's only about 4 of them.
It looks like a bad comb over.
I mean, you got to floss somehow.
Oh. And you're hearing her giggle right now. Returning to the show, someone who is waiting on her first kiss and wondering whether or not you put your tongue underneath the other tongue. We have DC-based improviser Isabel Galbraith returning to the show. Welcome back, Isabel.
Thanks. Hey, everybody.
Man, if this intro could not have been weirder or any grosser, it wouldn't have been adolescence. We are, of course, talking about Netflix's show Big Mouth, which is all about puberty and adolescence. So if these are any things that you're just like, oh, this is conjuring up terrible memories of everything that I used to be when I was a kid, this is now your option to just fast forward and abandon this episode. But if you're a weird creepo like we are and you want to talk about puberty, stick around. This is going to get weird. We have to start with really the ultimate question that is going to sort of set the scaffolding for everything that we're going to talk about tonight is, what was puberty like for you? So Isabel, what was puberty like for you?
I think I had an unusual experience in that I was a very bookish kid and very much like out of step with my peers. So when everyone else was like listening to NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, I was listening to the Beatles and I was reading like Little House on the Prairie. So I was just very nerdy and sheltered. So when puberty happened, I pretty much stuck my nose in a book and pretended it wasn't happening. So I was really like ignoring it. And so it was only when other people would mention it to me that I would kind of be like, huh. I remember in ninth grade, my friend Grace made a comment about like how my breasts had gotten bigger. And I was literally like, what? Like I hadn't noticed. I had not noticed. It was like swoop right over my head. All of it was like that. So I just
Puberty, you're saying?
All of puberty was just
Okay, was over your head.
It was. It went past me. I mean, it happened, but I didn't clock it happening, you know? I mean, I definitely had embarrassing moments, you know. And I think to further prove this point, I didn't have my first kiss until senior year of high school. So like I was just very
Nothing weird about that.
Okay.
Nothing weird about that at all.
Okay, Sean. You want to tell us about your first kiss?
No, but I won't get that awkward into everything just yet.
So yeah, mine was just kind of, I was in the dark, and I'm curious to hear if you guys were more like aware of what was happening to you, because I was just pretending it wasn't.
Alex, you are smiling like you had the worst puberty experience, which could also be the best puberty experience.
Well, I mean, I'm still going through it. So, you know, we're all going through these changes in our bodies. And sometimes, you know, they happen sooner than others, you know. So here I am growing my wispy hairs on my upper lip, using them to floss every day, hoping one day that my testicles descend. But, you know, who knows? Maybe that's not connected.
Gonna be very honest with you. If that hasn't happened now, you should run to a doctor.
All right.
We'll take you.
I'll see you guys later. Yeah, no. So going through and like thinking back about puberty, I honestly think I was one of those kids who I was just a big old loser, you know, but like not like a lose. Like I was a loser in my own mind. I think I just was like a person and everyone else's. You know, a lot of self-defeating behaviors, things like that. But when I think about myself and going through puberty, I always really connected with Freaks and Geeks.
Mm-hmm.
Man, those boys in Freaks and Geeks. Like I wasn't a nerd when I was in. I mean, maybe I was. I did drama. What a loser. But
well, don't you don't have to worry. I'm gonna dig into that in mine.
But you know, I wasn't like a kid who played D&D, although I'm sure I probably would love it. I wasn't like a kid who played a bunch of video games, and you know, I never got into that. So like I think I was the person who did not put, like everyone talks about that cliche of like, oh, you just got to put yourself out there. Did not put myself out there. Probably would have had you know, a better time if I would have put myself out there. So I just like, I don't want to say a recluse. I just hang out. I was hanging out with friends and like thinking all of these what ifs that just never came to be. So it was a little lonely. First kiss when I was in 11th grade.
Okay.
So yeah, first kiss when I was in 11th grade. Still a virgin to this day.
Looking forward to that wedding night.
Yep. Just waiting, saving it. It's like you know, Hercules with that hair. That's what I'm doing with my upper lip. As soon as it gets cut, I either die or
you lose your.
I lose my virginity.
I think that was Samson and not Hercules.
Yeah, but the cartoon Hercules, they did that. So
Disney's just rewriting history in terms of everything that they could do.
Whatever floats your boat, you know.
It's a haircut.
Yeah, it's a haircut, or just a way you lose your virginity.
Everybody, I think we can agree, parables are weird. My puberty experience, I felt, was a little bit of a combination of both of yours. So when I was going into middle school, I hit that very awkward phase where the summer from 5th to 6th grade, I got glasses and I got braces. Oh. All at the same time. And so I was like, oh no.
Double whammy.
Yeah, really double whammied me.
I'm sorry you haven't gotten them off to this day.
I just can't take them off. I don't know how to get rid of them. Also, orthodontists won't work with me because they're just like, this is far out of the warranty. And
things are rusted shut. I'm surprised you don't have lockjaw.
And they're like, it's gross and we don't want to touch it. But, you know, again, some people, you know, from the traits that they picked up in puberty refuse to brush their teeth. So I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah, no.
I was going to my dad and my mom had split when I was like 6 or 7. My dad was doing the whole weekend warrior thing with my sister and I, and so on a lot of those weekends where kids that were in that 6th, 7th, 8th grade were going to the movies together on like a Friday night, or they were going to a sporting event, and at that time they may have like smoked their first cigarette or had a drink of beer or kissed somebody or kind of had that social interaction with the opposite sex. I was at my dad's place and I was doing art stuff. Like I I was drawing, or I was playing video games, or I was probably playing Dungeons and Dragons. I played Magic the Gathering for a very long time. And so I kind of, again, had that sort of removed experience where that socialization for me that should have happened in middle school didn't really occur until I started doing theater at the very end of 8th grade. And even then it became hard because I was a guy who could perform, who could act, I could dance, and I could sing.
Well,
thanks, buddy.
Yep, no problem. Just gotta keep you in check.
Nah, just gotta keep me humble. So yep. I was able to do those things at a young age, but I was teased by other guys that I was doing it with, and I was called pejorative terms for people who would be in a same-sex male relationship.
Oh.
And that happened to me pretty much all throughout a majority of high school. And it was challenging. And so I didn't really enjoy that experience. So not only was it sort of delayed, the puberty kind of felt, and a lot of the interaction was sort of delayed by like good 3 to 4 years, but then to kind of be teased. And I did finally eventually meet a group of friends that I was able to socialize with, that I was able to kind of hang out with and feel comfortable. But then when I went to college, it was sort of having the rug swept out from under me. So those high school experiences of socializing with people kind of then transitioned into college. So I kind of always felt like I was 3 to 4 years behind in terms of those socializations. And so it wasn't even until after I had graduated college that I started to really feel comfortable with myself, with who I am, and sort of have more kind of opinions and direction in terms of what I wanted to do, how I wanted to act. And I think a lot of it for me came down to kind of having sort of those firm opinions about that resolve as a human of what I wanted or what I kind of believed in. Like I started making ideas for myself and being like, this is what I feel I want to believe in right now. Granted, I was reading a lot of weird shit at that time. So those, I think probably 24-year-old me and 38-year-old me, completely different people. In terms of what was happening. But I mean, I don't even think it was until a lot of us started performing in the DC area together even, where it was like I finally felt like I was getting better at being able to do sort of stuff that I was an adult or I think was an expectation of an adult. In some cases, I felt like I was almost having like I almost kind of felt like I was having a second puberty for those parts where I was just like, oh, I'm still very awkward around people. And even now, there are just moments where I will be completely excited and happy to hang out with people, but now I know my limit. I know my limit to a point where I can be like, I've had a great time and I need to go home and not be around anybody. And so I think it sort of was that weird kind of understanding of I'm not an introvert and I'm not an extrovert. I kind of really sit in between the middle. And I didn't have that when I was a kid. Everybody thought I was an extrovert. They were like, you need to get out there. You need to put yourself into things. You need to put yourself out there, really kind of dig in, double down on it. And that there were parts of that just felt like it destroyed me. Like I didn't understand that I could kind of have that moment where I could kind of remove myself from the equation, kind of recharge and kind of relax a little bit. Mine's been kind of weird. I'm still going through puberty, guys.
Yep. Me too.
I'm done.
Mission accomplished.
Even if it did happen again, Isabel, like the first time, you would have been like, I read a book
That's
and
true.
I ignored it and it flew right over my
Flew
head.
right by.
Didn't matter.
No impact.
We are talking about Big Mouth. And so if you are not familiar with this show, let's give you some history. So Big Mouth is an American animated adult sitcom that was created by Nick Kroll, Andrew Goldberg, Mark Levine, and Jennifer Flackett, based on Kroll and Goldberg's tweenage years growing up in Westchester County, New York, and with Kroll voicing his actual fictional self. The first season, consisting of 10 episodes, premiered on Netflix on September 29th, 2017, and the second season was recently released on October 5th of 2018. So this has not been a show that's been out for very long. We have 2 seasons, a total of 20 episodes that are available. And all of this is streaming right now for your binge-worthy addiction on Netflix. If you are not familiar with the contents of this show, and if our puberty stories haven't scared you off at this point, Isabel is going to help us out with a little bit of the synopsis for the show.
Yes. So this series follows a group of 7th graders including best friends Nick Birch and Andrew Glauberman, as they navigate their way through puberty, masturbation, and sexual arousal in the suburbs of New York City. Acting as sex-based shoulder angels are the Hormone Monsters, Maurice, who pesters Andrew and occasionally Nick and Jay, and Connie, who pesters Jesse and occasionally Missy. Throughout the series, the kids interact with people and objects who are personified in one way or another and offer helpful, albeit confusing, advice in their puberty-filled lives, including the ghost of Duke Ellington, a French-accented Statue of Liberty, a pillow capable of getting pregnant, and even Jesse's own genitals.
Very, very weird combination that if you were to say, we're going to put this into a cartoon, I don't think that I would have wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
Or I may have thought, I'm going to watch a lot of this.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be a psychopath to want to enjoy this. It's very true.
But I mean, it is a challenging conversation to have about puberty in general. And we're going to get a little bit more into that during the plot discussion that we have for tonight. But to kick off our discussion for this show, we have to obviously jump into the theme song. And to help us kick us off with her impressions of the theme song, Isabel.
What? No.
What?
What? An impression of the theme song?
No, just your your impressions.
I thought you were wanting me to do an impression of it.
We want you to do a rendition,
Oh,
a
shit.
full rendition of the song.
I love the theme song. This is totally my kind of music. It's like soul music. It's, we already talked about how it sounds like James Brown. It might be my favorite thing about the show is the theme song.
Really?
Yeah, just a little foreshadowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Pretty sick burn.
Any additional final thoughts about the theme song? Could be your favorite thing?
My favorite thing.
Wow. All right. Alex, what do you got?
Yeah, I really love the theme song. Once I had heard it, I didn't even start with the first episode. I paused it and was like, "Who is this? Like, what is this magic that I just heard?" So I looked it up and was like, "Oh, Charles Bradley. I've never heard of this guy before." And then when I was digging through, I was like, "Oh, all this makes so much sense." Like James Brown impersonator back in the day as Black Velvet, and just like so many different television shows recently that his music has been featured on. It's one of those things where it's like a smooth, buttery, soulful track where when I first heard it, I was like, how have I never heard this before?
I know.
This is from the 70s, guaranteed. Like, why is this not getting radio play? But it's fresh. I mean, it's not that old.
No, it's not. And I think the thing that about Charles Bradley that really is interesting is that he had been working and performing and as a large part of his life for decades, and he didn't really get to a point where he had reached critical acclaim or success. And then once he kind of got to that status where, he was doing like a Spotify session a couple years ago, and we're talking like 2015, 2016, it was very shortly after that he found out that he was actually diagnosed with stomach cancer. And so he passed away actually in the time frame that Big Mouth aired originally on Netflix. So September of 2017 is when he passed away.
Wow.
But I think, and I guess maybe what makes the story so sad, but also like so soulful and rewarding at the same time is that he finally did hit that pinnacle. And he knew that like his time was up, and he just continued to perform and have a great time. From everything I've been able to read and gather about his life, is that he hit that point where he was like, I'm gonna leave it all out on the stage. I'm gonna have a great performance, and I mean that's what you want, to hear that kind of soul in the modern era, like in the 20 teens. That seems like again like something that should have happened during the 70s. And you think to yourself again, like, how the fuck have I missed this for so long? Because it's such a perfect amount of vocal burn and just grittiness on the end of his voice.
I think in his honor, we should all three of us sing it right now. At least that opening part.
I'd almost want to, but I'm afraid that
No, we're gonna do it.
that YouTube would just be like, you can't publish your videos anymore because you keep copywriting these things. So thanks a lot, YouTube, for giving us these copyright restrictions.
Crushing it.
You're doing fantastic. I will say this. I think what leads to the success is not only the music, the visual component to this. This is dedicated animation that you will not see used or recycled in any of the episodes. So they obviously had a lot of confidence going into this from the get-go of saying, we are going to spend a lot of time, we're going to invest the effort into being able to do this. You get a visual kind of introduction of a lot of the characters, but they're not kind of lined up with their names or even the actors that they have.
Yeah,
there.
that really confused me when I first watched it. I was like, wait a second, that was not the right name to the right character.
At one point when they're like zooming in on Jessie when she's having like a moment, it's like
Jason Mantzoukas. Yep.
yeah.
And I was like, Jason Mantzoukas is probably watching this with like a silhouette of somebody's boobs, and he's like, all right.
Yeah, just like I
Perfect.
dreamed. Yeah.
All right, what's up, jerks? So he's probably loving that moment. But they do a good job of kind of introducing this with the music, everything that they have layered on top. I'd say that this is probably one of the best theme songs that I've heard and watched in a very long time, minus the sort of the roll call or introduction for these characters, because there are a lot of characters. But I'll say probably my favorite moment at the very end of the theme song is that moment where you see Andrew and Nick out kind of in this field being kids, enjoying themselves, and you see them smiling, and then all of a sudden there's the Hormone Monster shadow over top of them, and you immediately see those like frowns, just smiles disappear. They're both like, oh no, what have we gotten ourselves into? And then the show begins.
Their eyes get really big. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the moment where a hand flicks the fallopian tube or whatever it is. I don't even know what part it is. And then
it's the female or Connie, her kind of like the silhouette of her
hand
finger. She kind of like flicks
it, and then the drop comes out. But I do like the way the drop of blood looks, and then it says Maya Rudolph, and it's on a splotch of blood.
Mm-hmm.
It looks cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is so stylized in it. But the visuals are obviously at some point very uncomfortable, like just to pull into somebody's armpit and see a bunch of hair.
I hate that one.
Yeah, that's what my face looks like.
Yeah.
For all you at home.
Just four.
Yeah, it's just four long, scraggly hairs.
Dangly, yeah.
I look like the squid pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Davy Jones?
Davy Jones, yeah,
Yes.
that's his name. The guy with the locker.
The guy with the
This is
locker.
related to the episode at hand here, people. There are lockers in middle school. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Wow, you really did a full pivot on
Yeah.
I have full control.
that. Over everything except that upper lip.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is disgusting.
Yep,
You need to wax it.
I do.
Gross. Moving on, we're going to get into the animation. And so, was there a contemporary cartoon that this made you think of? Did you enjoy this animation style? Anything particular that you liked about it, Isabel?
I think it reminded me a little bit of Family Guy or American Dad a little bit in the drawings of the characters. But yeah, I didn't love it or hate it. Just fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like we ride through like waves of style. And we're in this like style right now where everything is like hard color, no gradient. Like it's just like firm lines. And I don't mind it either way. I think it's easy to watch visually. But it's not like the intro is more complex than any of the episodes, which also makes sense. I mean, it takes a lot of work to animate.
Right.
So you can spend more time on a 15-second or 30-second intro than you can the intricate details of each episode.
Sure.
But yeah, I like it.
No. I agree with you as well, Isabel. I felt like there was some American Dad kind of Family Guy style. It's very interesting to see this almost contrast with 2 weeks ago when we had talked about BoJack Horseman, because there are certain characters that have almost like a watercolor gradient underneath some of the characters in certain parts.
Yeah.
But again, to Alex's point, it does have that very solid color, minimal shadow.
It's like Bob's Burgers-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I think the thing that's nice about it is that it's nothing seems too bright, nothing's too offensive. They do a really good job of using color, especially kind of with a lot of the anthropomorphized characters. The kids that we have with this are very kind of like blue and green, purples, reds that they have that kind of really pop and stand out to help you identify those specific characters. And then you contrast that with something that's a little bit more of an earth tone with these hormone monsters. They do a good job of finding and striking balance visually in terms of the color palette that they use. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
I like that my voice is just getting so hoarse. I just feel like I'm falling right into Maurice right now.
Oh, no, scary.
Is that what you want?
I mean, I
No.
think you are my Maurice.
Is that what
Oh my God.
gonna sprinkle on a little bit of nocturnal seminal emissions right there. There you go. You gotta wait until later to enjoy that.
All right. What do I do about what happened now?
you sit in it, you filthy animal.
Oh, God.
Speaking of some of these characters, Hormone Monster, Nick, Andrew, all these characters that we have a pretty interesting cast of people. And we could go through a lot of them, but the big question that I want to ask us tonight is there somebody from the cast in the show that you identify with? And the reason is because I think that this show does a great job of giving you some tropes and some standard stereotypes for people who were in middle school, but not grossly abusing those stereotypes. They do a good job, again, of really kind of striking that balance and going after good specific jokes that they have that are available. And so is there a character that you kind of identify with? Because again, I feel I could either be any one of these characters or I knew somebody who was that character, who was sort of that Jay. I did know a Jay. It was real gross.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yuck.
I am almost hesitant to tell this story, but it was a friend who, like, and this was in high school, who you'd be like hanging out and then you'd look over and he would have pulled his scrotum over top of his penis. And he would be waiting for people to just look at him.
Just create the egg.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think he called it the fallout shelter.
Oh, God.
And like he would like, and this was even before Ryan Reynolds did the movie Waiting, where like they're talking about like the bat wing and like and somebody's like testicles and that, and they're like, it's so veiny, and and it just kind of came one of those like gross things that you would hear everybody in college say at some point. It sort of became a part of that collegiate zeitgeist for that period of time, and we weren't even at that point. This was like late 90s high school, and somebody's he called it the bomb shelter. It's not the fallout shelter. He called it the bomb shelter.
I mean, both are the same.
But I mean, yes. But it was just gross because you turn around and you'd see it and be like, ah.
And the penis was in the shelter?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glad he didn't call it the Fallout Boy. Something like a little pop punk action.
Just Pete Wentz just pops out.
Hey, guys.
And he's just like, dance. And you're like, don't do that. Stop it.
Stop
please. He's like, you guys want to go hang out under the cork tree?
Nope.
It's pubic hair. You're like, no. No, I don't.
Please.
I don't. These are all the Fallout or Fallout Boy references that I know.
Yeah.
This is it.
We peak here.
I know none.
So, Isabel, any particular character that you identified with? Was there anybody that you felt kind of was going along the journey that you had when you were in middle school? Or simply was there a character that you were like, that was my favorite character, hands down?
I think I have more of a favorite character than one that was like me. But Andrew was definitely my favorite character, and Andrew's parents.
Okay.
I might feel like I identify most with his mother. But no, Andrew has that, like, I'm Jewish. He's Jewish, right, in the show? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just that kind of, neurotic, nerdy, a little bit uptight. He's more of a rule follower than Nick and is a little slower to be gross. He's a little more, I don't know, he seems less gross than Nick or Jay. And so,
oof.
You think? No?
I think there are, I think because that character, because the Andrew character is going through puberty earlier than some of his friends, that he is definitely in that moment where he's just like, I'm going to masturbate to everything.
That's true.
So is that what you're trying to say?
I wasn't going to admit it. No, it's more of his, like, I wrote down a line, his ideal date was like Hamilton and then going to Starbucks after. I mean, it's that kind of like
it's pretty good.
Sweet nerdiness that I really like.
Okay.
Yeah, he was definitely my favorite.
So it seems like it's more of sort of the ideals and sort of wants and desires as opposed to sort of the hormone induced kind of craziness that he was going through at that time.
Yes.
Understood. Great. Alex, anybody that you identified with or anybody that you absolutely loved?
Yeah, so I think I identify the most with and this is fun. I think I probably identify the most with Coach Steve.
Oh.
So when I was a kid, this is great. I love this. When I was a kid, I always had this fear in the back of my mind that I might be like developmentally disabled in some way, shape, or form.
What?
Oh.
And the fear is that no one would ever tell you.
Oh.
And what if you didn't have the cognitive abilities to figure it out? So I had this benchmark in my mind created that was, well, if this was true, they wouldn't give me a license to drive. So I waited until then, and then I was like, no, I'm good.
Oh,
I got my driver's license, and I was like, I'm set.
So a state issued ID was sort of your benchmark.
It was my benchmark.
Oh Jesus.
that I'm okay.
But
Oh.
but I mean, Coach Steve goes through those same problems.
But it's very interesting because you confessed to me earlier that your license had been taken away.
Yeah. So I think I might be still in the same
Oh,
boat.
jeez. Still waiting to see if the appeals process is gonna.
Still waiting. Everyone. I mean, I do have a handler, so I'm just trying to figure it out
Oh my god.
day to day. Trying to figure it out.
I feel like you're past that point. I feel like you know that you're in a good place.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Definitely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
There are moments where I'm just like, I don't see a smile in the corner of his mouth, so I wonder if he's being very serious about
It's
this.
like, do we need to support him in this
Yeah.
moment?
Right. Should
In this
we be
challenging time?
Having
Does
him
the-
on the shoulder.
Does this podcast just become sort of a gratuity circle?
I gotta say, just so it's not offensive, it wasn't one of those things where I was like, this is a definite, but it was like a 1. I don't even want to say a 1. It was like a 0.5% possibility. It was just like a rumination in the back of the mind. Like this, like it could be true. It
No.
could be true. Would we ever know?
But you get obsessed at like a young age
Yeah.
about those things. You know,
Yeah.
you get
I'm neurotic about things.
when you said ruminate, like I used to just ruminate about weird things. Like
I still do.
yeah, I still do. Like, and it becomes not necessarily a compulsion for me, but I have a problem sometimes where I feel like I don't do a lot during a day. And so I've had to write everything actually out or use like one of those like note apps that kind of shows all the tasks that I'm doing. So when I select them and click everything off at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, I actually did do a bunch of stuff.
Mhm.
Like,
I think a lot of people go through that.
and I think it's very easy to point out failures throughout the day. And then conversely, it's very challenging to say, oh, this was successful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nobody wants to talk about a success. It's far easier and you get more emotional over a failure than you do an actual success. And so showing that little bit of appreciation, I think sometimes is kind of crazy. But I used to be neurotic about that. I still am a little bit kind of crazy about it and use like, different apps like Wunderlist to kind of like peg things out for myself. Because I'm like, if I don't do all of this today,
Yeah.
what's going to happen tomorrow? I'm like,
Mm.
and then I had somebody put it into context with me. This was maybe like 6 years ago. I was working for somebody, former military. It was a Friday afternoon. It was like 4:30. And he's like, hey, I'm packing up and I'm leaving the office. And I was like, all right, cool. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like checking email, writing some code. And he's like, you got to get out of here. And I'm like, no, I got like a little bit more to do. I got like another couple hours. He's like, look, if you don't finish this today, does anybody die? No. Yeah, go home.
Mm.
Go home and enjoy yourself.
Mm.
He goes, unless it's like mission critical and somebody's going to die, if there's a life on the line, you can always do it tomorrow.
What happens if there's never a life on the line, though?
I guess I don't know.
Ugh, what am I doing with my life?
Again, I feel like this is becoming a support group for you.
I know. I
very
just want to
quickly.
talk also
So-
about how I have worried sometimes that I'm on the autism spectrum and I don't know it. Like the same thing. Like no
Yeah.
one's told me, no one's diagnosed it. I'm slowly self-diagnosing it. It's sometimes what I worry because I love animals so much. That's usually my first thing. It's like I just love animals so much. That seems like a big sign.
Of autism?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I
I'm
think
not
it
an
is.
expert. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
an
yeah.
expert.
I think
Temple granted.
I mean, I know. I've heard professionals say that everyone's a little bit on the spectrum.
Right.
Like it is a spectrum for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
sure. No, I
You got-
totally
you got-
understand.
Both ends.
Mhm.
You know.
You know,
And some of us are just Coach Steve, and some of us are Andrew, and
oh my God.
some of us are what?
Yeah, who are you?
Who are you?
Oh God. I'm probably a combination of Nick Birch and Jay Blazarian.
I see that.
I think sort of the logical kind of approach and kind of focus of the Nick character of just saying like, these are the things I'm going to do. And like, even if something feels like I have to now be the bigger person in a situation, I'm just going to go and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it done. But then there's definitely a kind of like a weird, more perverse side to me every once in a while, which is the Jay character where I'm just like, I could be really dirty right now.
Yeah.
Am I in an appropriate audience to be able to do this? Oh, I am? Great. Let it go. But if I'm not, it's like, oh,
How are your mandatory community service hours going?
it's going great.
Good. I'm glad to
Yep.
hear that.
Learned a big lesson from
Yep.
that one.
Yep. There's just some bad choices. Everyone,
Wrong audience.
I mean, everyone has that happen from now on.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Everyone.
it's challenging too because like I'm I'm around a lot of people for work on a regular basis, and so there are those moments like where somebody will say something, and I'm like, that person does not know how to read a room. Like that
Mhm.
person does not get the social clues or contexts of what's happening in this space. They
Yeah.
should have abandoned ship 5 minutes, and they're still talking. Cool.
But that's why I love the phrase "read the room" because in
Yeah.
3 little words you can be like, "Hey."
Yep.
It's hard though, like when you, especially for being somebody in their late 30s, to work with people who are like 10 15 20 years older than you and just be like, you guys got to read the room better.
True, it's hard.
And because a lot of people will just kind of get set in their ways. I think sometimes because of the actor and improv training that we've had, I think that we're a little bit more empathetic sometimes to kind of notice those things. Or sometimes we're, let's put it in a way that Alex can get this.
Yeah. Dumb it down for me. Come on.
Yeah, dumb it down. Sometimes
We listen good.
Okay. I got it. I understand now. Now you're talking my language.
we do listen well, but we also know sometimes, like in those conversations, like when we can exploit it.
Mm.
And so we're kind of on both sides, where
Yep.
it's like, do I use this power for good? Do I use it for evil?
Evil
So,
99.9% of the time for me. I'm not going to lie. I have 2 personalities. I have like a personality at work that is very different than who I actually am.
Wow.
I like have like flips of the coin.
I
Like when people call me that know me well and I'm at work, it's like they're like, you're at work, aren't you?
They can hear your
They can
voice.
hear it in my voice.
It's a Jekyll Hyde.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to live and be 2 people.
Oh.
I want you
I-
guys to know.
it-
Does anyone want to just like ignore the rest of this episode and just help me?
Yeah.
This is a cry for help.
Therapy
This is a cry for help.
no, I will say this though, like professionally, I spent a lot of time kind of hiding my particular interests and my performance endeavors from coworkers. And I wouldn't talk about them. I would not talk about, podcasting. I wouldn't talk about performing on stage. I wouldn't talk about any of the sketch shows that I was doing. I wouldn't even plug the fact that 10, 11 years ago, I was doing stand-up and going to open mics.
Ooh.
I would not talk about that to almost anybody. I know it was terrible. It was not. It was, again, it was like, it was maybe,
Yeah.
that moment was maybe 3rd and 4th puberty rolled into one. It was
Yeah.
like, how awkward and bad can I get?
It's probably really confusing for people at my work because I still talk about doing shows, but I like play this like more straight laced character. And so they're probably like, man, this guy's got to be bad.
Yeah. He's
He's
not funny
not
at all.
funny.
Yeah.
He's way too serious. What's going on with that guy?
I feel the same way, is that, because I was hiding a lot of those things, I felt like for a long period of time, I was leading sort of this double life where end of the day, I would kind of wrap up everything that I was doing, drive into DC and actually like have fun with what was going on. And I wasn't doing that at work. And I think finally I've gotten to that point where I'm sort of the same person at work as well as also at home and in kind of artistic endeavors. And so that kind of feels nice.
I'm a very different person with my friends than I am with my parents. And actually, one of the things thinking about Big Mouth that's kind of cool is that the kids, even as they're going through these changes, are talking about some of it in front of the parent characters without too much self-consciousness. Whereas
Right.
I remember trying to be very distant from my parents with anything remotely, like we wouldn't, like sitting around the dinner table, I would never bring up a guy I had a crush on, or I would never talk about a friend dating someone or something,
I think this brings us as a great segue into talking a little bit more about the plot. And I think a question that I want to throw out to all of us is, what was that sex talk like with your parents?
So mine didn't have a talk. They got me a book.
Okay. All right. No. That's how mine happened as well.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
this was young. This was when I was still living in Aspen Hill. So it was like 3rd grade, maybe like 7 or 8, like pretty young.
Wow.
Yeah. And they got me this book, and it was a very like 1970s looking book. I wish I could remember the title. I just remember that there were like illustrations of men and women kind of like arms around each other, like not showing anything explicit, but it was very much in the style of like free to be you and me, like, and they gave it to me with like 0 explanation that I remember. And I read it, and then I had a friend over and I was excited to show her the book, and then later my parents got mad at me because I wasn't supposed to show it to anyone. But I didn't know that,
It was an unspoken rule.
Yeah.
That wasn't very fair.
Oh.
But I feel like what happened with you is what happens with a lot of people, is that either somebody has an older sibling and that sibling kind of tells you or finds out, or you find out about it rather early and then you educate a friend, and then a friend tells a friend, and then everybody gets bad information, and then you're like, what have we done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, mine was 5th grade, so not too far off from yours, but I grew up with this kid who he had an older brother who went to middle school, and he had some sex education classes, and I guess had probably stolen a porno from somebody or something like that, and had shown or had talked about it to his brother, and then his brother, his name was Alan. Alan then was in my grade, and I remember like we were in lunch, and Alan was like, "Have you guys heard about sex?"
Psst.
Yeah. And it was like me and like one other person, and we're like, "What?" And he's like, "Come on in, let me tell you about sex." And he like got like he had this like conversation. He's like, "This is what I know so far," and we were like, "What?"
Did he have it right?
I think most of it. I took it and let it just ruminate in my brain. I was like, "What the fuck is this thing? Like, how does this happen?" I didn't know really what it was, and I got so confused about it that one night I woke up, and my mom was still downstairs, and she was, single mom. She is the only person home. She's like wrapping up her day, and I walked down into the kitchen, and she's there, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, what's up?" So I heard that there's like this sex thing. What is it? And like a fucking champion, she reached behind like a divide that was in the kitchen and pulled out a book and was like, she's like, "It's a good question. I have this book over the next like couple weeks, like every night after your sister goes to bed," because she was like 3 years younger. She's like, "We're going to read a chapter of this book."
Wow.
Like, we're going to read a chapter, help you understand it. And there were parts in that book that were even about like general masturbation. Like you said, right over my head. I was like, I don't even understand this. I don't even get it. I think I was in middle school, or I was probably in high school, and some kid was outside, and he was just like looking at a bunch of us, and he was an upperclassman, and he's looking at a bunch of like 9th graders, and he's like, "You guys masturbate?" And we're all like, "No, no, no." He's like, "That's gross. Why don't you masturbate?" And we're like, "Oh, we said the wrong thing." And we were like, "Oh, damn it.
We should have said
We've
yes.
made mistakes.
But whatever we would have said, he would have said gross to it anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we would have,
You probably made the right choice.
yeah, we were not going to win.
But
Yeah.
did that encouragement send you home thinking I should try this?
I was in 9th grade, so I was
Oh, okay.
I was already
Oh, gotcha.
I
He was already well
varsity.
in. He was lying.
Gotcha.
I had it was a Letterman's jacket at that point.
Oh, gross.
Sorry.
No, I know. It's a terribly hard and confusing and weird thing to talk about all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex, did you have an experience with it?
So
Still waiting to get the talk.
yeah, I'm
right?
still waiting to talk. No, I never got the talk.
What?
I was gypped.
Oh.
But I also didn't like ask for it. As I mentioned before, I'm still a virgin. But no one knows me on here. This is me literally screaming into a cacophony that is the internet. But anyway, someone please help me.
You're going to get all of these like proposals
I
to
am.
take your virginity
Yeah,
from people.
Please, anyone. Doesn't matter. Human, whatever.
Jeez, no, we do not endorse that.
No, we don't. So anyway, I went through family life education as part of our public school system. So I learned through that. And I think my parents just assumed like, oh, he's getting everything that he needs to know. And truthfully, probably wasn't everything that we needed to know, but pretty good overall.
What grade was that?
So it starts when you're in, I want to say like 1st or 2nd grade, and they start like,
What?
but they titrate it based on like what that age can handle. So it's like really simple first. So that way it's not like, oh, you're, the stork is coming and bringing in babies. Like they're trying to like ramp it up. So it's like science is real.
Okay.
And so, you go through all these different phases, and by the time you get to the end, that's when you get like the I don't think it's an X-ray shot. I think it's like an infrared or some kind of like CT scan of like a penis going into a vagina, and like ejaculating, and so like that's the explanation that this
That's
school
like the
system gives you.
climax.
That's the money
all of
shot.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It's the money shot. It's the money shot. So so that's what I got, and I don't distinctly remember having any conversations with my parents. I remember the first time that I heard about sex was from my cousin, and we were in canoes or kayaks or something like that. We were like on a river, and like my dad and my uncle were like way far behind us, and he was like, "Hey, you hear about sex?" And I was like, "No, hand me that fishing rod." Now, it was a real fishing rod. It wasn't his penis.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not getting freaky. It was in West
good.
Virginia, but I'm not getting freaky with my cousin
So it
at
seems
that
like
point in time.
a lot of guys would ask each other, "Have you heard of sex?" Both of you had that experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it has to do with bragging rights, like who found out first. And the answer is always not the person who is telling the story, because the other person, like they were telling this story 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30
Right.
years ago.
Mhm.
I think it's, and I think if you have an older sibling, because I was the oldest.
Me too.
So if you have that older sibling, you sort of have then a leg up, because then with that knowledge that they have, they're going to let something slip at some point. Like they're going to say something or something's going to come out and you're going to be like, wait, what? And kids these days, I hate the fact that I just said kids these days,
Ugh.
are
Yikes.
they have more accessibility to be able to find a lot of information about it. I would have had to pull out an Encyclopedia Britannica
Under
like
S.
S.
Yeah.
Been like, gonna
And
look
then
this
quickly
up.
to P and then
Gonna
quickly
look
to V.
this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember a friend came over in maybe like 4th or 5th grade with a cassette tape with the song "Let's Talk About Sex" on it. And we played it on my cassette player in my room really softly so my parents wouldn't hear. But we just wanted to hear what they were talking about.
Yeah. I feel like the first porno mag I saw was like a Playboy, and it was like in the woods. Like I feel like it was
I feel like
it was like in the
every
woods in a
boy-
tree house.
Yeah.
Every boy has like an in the woods porno
Yes.
story, or like a found porno thing where they're like, yo, that video place that has the adult section, I was out back and they had a bunch of tapes and they dumped them in the
Threw
trash
him away.
and I grabbed 2 of them. You want to
That's-
borrow one?
yeah,
You're
it's always like-
yes, I do.
It's always like when my uncle wasn't looking. He took too much vitamin C that day, fell asleep, started getting frothy at the mouth, and I just took I took like 3 of them. It was December of 96 and like June of 2001. So like he'll never know. He's got every month, but he'll never look back that far.
we had this kid in my middle school named Todd.
No,
And
Todd.
Yeah, I know. Todd's dad, it was one of those people who like dubbed VHSs from like a Blockbuster. Like he was in the time like where then a couple years later, like when people
He had
were
a dual
burning DVDs,
He had a dual VCR.
he
Yeah.
had a dual VCR, and so he was recording all these VHS tapes. But he was also like, and he had like an entire binder with a log of like where everything was, and in there was an entire adult section.
I feel like
And so-
what is the index of that? Like there's a Zapruder film, then all the pornos that he copied. Like how does that work?
Yeah, you do A to Z and then you start over with porn.
I actually think that that's what it was. It was
Yeah.
like
Oh,
regular
yikes.
movies that people would watch, A to Z, and then it was like adult, and then it just like by title. And I remember there were like 2 years in a row where he had a sleepover at his dad's house, and like our moms should not have let us go on.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
It was a total mistake.
Come on. It was Todd.
It was, but I mean, it was something where like his dad was like, "I'm gonna go drink," and like left the house. And then we ended up watching like 1 or 2 pornos, and like our small minds were blown.
I bet.
Yeah.
See, that doesn't happen with girls. We never find porn mags in the woods, or we're not
mean, it's
finding
probably-
our like aunt's stash of porn. Or,
It's
like,
probably safer in the long run.
maybe,
Honestly.
maybe.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. It's a better experience if you don't find it.
In the woods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the thing is like how many people have jerked off and touched that magazine that you're just getting for like your poor little virgin hands touching that magazine that's just been soiled.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out and say this hot take. Found porn is not good porn.
Yeah.
If you ever
There's a
find
But
reason
it's
somebody's
something. It's something. We had nothing.
I mean, if you ever find a stash of porn in general that is not your stash,
You don't want it.
yeah, put police tape over top of
Yeah.
it. Back
Call-
away.
Call
it's a
911.
It is a crime scene.
It's probably a trap.
A net's gonna fall down.
Chris Hansen pops out of the woods. Hey kids. It's me. Dateline NBC.
He's very gruff in this.
I mean, I was younger then, so everyone sounded more intimidating. Did Chris Hansen not pop out in the woods for you guys?
No, never.
Oh, jeez.
One of the big questions that I know that we've kind of discussed in our pre-show was, does this show actually do a good job of talking about puberty? And so I think we all have our own individual stories. Hopefully everybody who's listening has their own too. Please feel free to like share them with us over social media. I mean, these things, I think the porn in the woods, I feel like is a universal story that has kind of almost hit myth. It's like Chupacabra in terms of its cryptid nature of handing it down from person to person, generation after generation. Hopefully maybe one day we can break the cycle of not finding in the woods porno.
I mean, I don't think it probably doesn't happen like that as much anymore because of the internet. Like, why do that?
I guess.
You have to find an old laptop in the woods.
Oh,
with like
man.
A search history.
That's terrifying.
Hey, did you guys find out? I found this old iPad and it doesn't have parental controls on it.
Wow.
Guys want to find a Wi-Fi signal and search the word porn?
This Windows 95 machine's so confusing.
It's going to take a long time. I feel like internet porn in the age of dial-up really taught me patience.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Who needs to learn how to meditate when you got that?
That was my zen in the art of motorcycle.
Yeah.
In like 96, 97, 98.
You were just taking slow, deep breaths as you waited for it to load.
It was a grand reveal. It was like each line of the photo as it loaded. It's like, oh yeah. And then it switches. It's just a car. It's just like a fully clothed person next to a car. It's like you see the face, you see the hair. It starts with the eyes. You're like, oh, this is gonna be good.
And then it's like turtleneck.
It's turtleneck. It's about as clothed as you can get. It's just a nun. It's a nun.
Damn it.
She has a sign that just says shame.
Yeah, shame. What have you done?
That was one of my most favorite lines I wrote down from the show. It's Andrew's mom, and they're asking. It's the episode with the shame wizard, and they ask her what she's ashamed of, and she goes, "I'm ashamed of everything. It's my great shame."
Just along the same lines, Isabel, is there like a favorite moment or like a quote that you kind of pulled out of this show that kind of encapsulated this? I think we have your shame wizard line. Alex, anything from you?
Oh man. So like in terms of takeaways, like the things that really stick with me are the non sequitur jokes, just because I love that so much from a comedic standpoint. Like you and I were the other day, we're talking about the ladybug joke. It's always at the end. I always feel like the strong ones are at the end of the episode too. And there's so much just peppered in, like so many jokes that are in the background.
The non sequitur bit that we were talking about that made me laugh so uncontrollably hard is at the end of episode 1, season 2, where Coach Steve, who I think might arguably be my favorite character, tells everybody he has he's deathly allergic to dairy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the end of the episode shows him basically drinking milk, and then in a very easy, simple format, the rest of the episode, the outro, is just pictures of him ingesting like other milk. It's him like taking a picture and he's eating a wheel of cheese.
Yep.
It's him like on a crash cart. Like it's him waking up in
it's all time dashes.
Yeah, and it's just all these like fun dashes that they have, and then it ultimately ends up with him in like a barnyard sucking on a cow's teat, but the cow is then throwing up. And it was
he transferred it.
It was so dumb. It was so dumb, and I laughed so fucking hard.
Yeah,
that and anything to do with the pillow girlfriend and Scorpion. I don't know why the anthropomorphic nature of things that get sexy in this show is so satisfying and weird at the same time, especially with Jay. I mean, the Jay character, just the level of perversion and the journey that he really goes through in the first and then especially the end of the second season is just bonkers.
Yeah. Well, like when he starts bonding with Coach Steve, that was one part I did enjoy.
Like Gary.
These two lost souls. Yeah.
Listening to Coach Steve talk about how to have sex was so funny. I love that he's a health teacher. Yeah. That's so great.
He's like, I made the thick in the bed or something.
The thick and the warm.
The thick and the warm.
Oh, I mean, that's essentially the education I got.
I had it was a PE teacher who was also our sex ed teacher.
Mm-hmm.
what do I care? He's not listening to this. Mr. Holstead. And it was something where, like, whenever he would say the word penis, his mouth would move in like a circle. He'd be like, so today we're going to talk about the penis.
Oh,
and he'd be
no.
like, what the fuck?
Was
For
he doing
listeners, Sean's mouth just went in a circle like 5 times.
Yeah. It was like he was drawing circles with his lips.
It was very weird.
Did he do that because it was like a nervous tick because he didn't want to talk about penis? Or
That would be
Was-
my guess.
I mean, I believe so. Look, nobody in 6th grade was going to be like, hey,
why are you doing that?
Coach, why are you being weird about this? But
I would have.
He would do it
I
every.
totally would have.
I know you would have. I wasn't that brave at like 10, 11. So we just sat there and just giggled the whole time like maniacs until we left the room, and we're just like, do you see his fucking weird face lip circle thing? And everybody knew that it was happening. It was so weird.
Yeah. I wouldn't have asked him in front of everyone. I would have asked him in private. I would have been like, what's going on with that? Like, is that something that I should be doing? Because I would start to feel really self-conscious about how I said penis.
Well, I think from now on, when you say penis, you should probably circle your mouth and your lips like that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, you weren't looking at me when I was talking into the microphone, but I did do that.
oh, okay, great, perfect.
I've already learned.
Any particular moments or sort of things that you had, Isabel, that were kind of that perfect encapsulation? And then I want to dig into whether or not we felt that this show did a good job of discussing puberty with us.
Another part that made me laugh a lot was, well, yeah, it's these side things. It was the Andrew's dad getting so focused and the rabbi getting so focused on the parking spaces. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Like Andrew's trying to find out about sin and they just cannot answer his questions because they're just obsessed with the parking spaces. I don't know. Stuff like that makes me laugh really hard. But my big beef with the show is I feel like it's pretending like it's trying to help young people by giving them like a vocabulary and by discussing things that aren't normally discussed. But I do not think the show's audience should be young people because I think it's way too adult. So it's like, I think there's a mismatch. I think the audience is adults who are going to laugh at this portrayal of like kids in puberty. But if that's the audience, there doesn't need to be any lessons or teaching, right? Because adults are already grown up. If the audience is younger middle schoolers, then yeah, I could see why there's such a push at the end of every episode for like body positivity or whatever, whatever lesson they're trying to get across.
Sure.
But I really hope middle schoolers are not watching this show.
They 100% are watching this
That's
show.
terrible because this show is so filthy and so crass and so mean-spirited. That's what I wrote down. This is a very mean-spirited show. Like, I wrote down 80% mean-spirited, 20% positive. And that's a generous estimation.
Yeah. I mean, I can say just from like firsthand experience, like middle schoolers are definitely watching this show and high schoolers too. And the thing is it's like they're using this language in like 5th grade and like 4th grade.
Already?
Yeah. So like the thing is it's like at what point do we determine and say, okay, like this is just how the world is and how people talk, and we say like, it is what it is, and just embrace it and like try to look at the positive of what the show is doing. Like, I don't know. For me, I totally agree. Like there are certainly things where it's like, I don't know if I would want my like middle school age kid watching the show. Mostly just because there are lines where it's like, at what point can someone who's young discern the difference between we're making fun of like the hormonal tendencies of someone feeling like that irrational urge to like steal from a store, and at what point is it's like, oh, like my hormone, like I think it's pretty clear that it's like, oh, it's a hormone monster, but at the same time it's like, oh well, everyone does it, and then it's like that encouragement through there.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that argument for sure. I think for me, just because I just hear it all the time in like school hallways where people are just like, it's the language is like, cool.
Wow.
Like I think I have a foul mouth. It's like, it's way worse than
Wow.
like you could even imagine. So, if you embrace that idea, like I do like a lot of the messages that exist within the show. I really like the episode in season 2 that is like the little vignettes that are about various reproduction and like the episode that's focused on Planned Parenthood, more or less. And I love the the nuanced jokes from within that episode where it's like, well, I'm gonna get death threats on Twitter. Like it's like breaking the fourth wall there. Like that's fantastic in my mind. And I think it's like, I don't think at first they realized and maybe they did, but I honestly think probably more or less it was someone convinced them and said like, you have a platform here and like you have a choice as to how you use said platform. And I think there was a conversation that occurred and someone clearly convinced them that it's like, well, if you're going to talk about like these things that are actually real that people may go through when they, experience sexual intercourse at an early stage in their life, then maybe these things actually need to be discussed versus just plastered on the wall as like, these are all bad or, misinformation or whatever it may be. Because even though like it was a lot of jokes, it was like, no, this is like also somewhat accurate. I mean,
kind of informative.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's really kind of the line that I've drawn with the show.
Yeah.
Is that it is crass and it does use a lot of very blue humor, but at the same time, it's getting actual solid information across. And if you need to use humor as the vehicle in order to deliver factual information about, sex, about, how to treat other people as they're going through this, the dynamics of relationships that you have. I mean, even in the first season, there's a lot of kind of conflict that you have between Nick and Andrew, where there's jealousy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of challenging feelings that they have. And so I'm going to venture to say that we've all had feelings like that, like when we were growing up. And those are hard conversations to have. And so if there is a little bit of kind of humor that's dropped along the way in order to kind of help break some of that tension, but also deliver like, hey, this is a healthy way of dealing with this, or this is a good conversation to have, or you know what, you're not alone in this sense. Because that, I mean, the whole idea of Nick just saying that like being comfortable and growing into his own with being what is he calls him like his hormone monster calls him like little dick boy.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to be a big dick boy.
Uh-huh.
Like, I want to be a big dick boy. And like, and just kind of like really kind of coming into his own. That's the wrong turn of phrase.
It's okay. It happens to all of us.
But it's the idea that they are delivering good information and they're doing it in a way that I think, because we're not growing up in this time, nor do any of us have any children. To Alex's point, I think kids are talking this way. When I see younger people that are having these discussions, that are talking about things, it's just like these things they're very brutally honest. And when they have misinformation, I feel like that really does them a disservice.
Yeah.
And so
it's like ignoring the problem or not. It's interesting because I mean, I have a dark sense of humor. If you have not picked up on that already in this episode, no way. What? So like for me, when someone says fuck, I don't see that as the joke within the show. And I can understand for the average person who may not use language that is that vulgar, that they perceive that as being the joke of the show. But I look at that as like the colloquial norms of these characters.
Right.
So if that's within your language wheelhouse and it's not like intended to be the joke, then you have to look at like the more nuanced elements of the show. And it's like, that's where the jokes exist.
It's like if bad language is a part of your lexicon, it's never going to be the punchline.
Yeah.
And so you actually have to look for, I don't think you have to look very hard in this show, but you like the humor is there in terms of the interactions and those really weird, awkward situations that they put these characters into.
Yeah.
For things that, I'm going to venture to say are very real and true to life for kids that, are coming to age in 2018.
Yep. I mean, I mentioned Freaks and Geeks earlier. I think that's another good show to look at from the standpoint of at least a boy's perspective of puberty. And like going through that show, obviously it was on over the air network. So like the language that they could use is very different. And I think there are a lot of elements of that show where it's like, this does not feel realistic. And maybe it was to the 80s, but I doubt it. Like I think boys were probably being more crass than what they were portrayed as in the show. So I think that's one thing. Like this show is a step beyond norm. It's like an exaggeration. But I do think there is something of truth in there.
I mean, the language doesn't bother me at all. It's more the graphicness of, I think especially the monster that talks to Andrew. Is it Andrew's monster?
Yeah.
he says the most like depraved stuff as
Oh,
if it's
Maurice.
no big
Uh-huh.
deal.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot. He gets a lot of lines, and it's his lines that make me cringe the most because I'm
Yeah.
like, this is inappropriate for
I
a
think
middle schooler.
I think it's like a good representation though of like the fucked up thoughts that like people have when they're going through puberty
Mm.
and like the like sexual urges and desires where it's like I mean there are definitely things where it's like I remember as a kid like why did I just masturbate to that? Like it goes through Andrew like it's
the
like
tomato.
yeah, the tomato and like all
That
these
made me
other
laugh.
things.
Yeah.
So like that kind of
Yeah.
context of just like these like just awful things that are happening, and then you have you ever heard of the idea of like you ejaculate or you come and then you have clarity,
Yeah.
a moment of clarity
Yeah.
afterwards. So I think that's kind of like what that monster is portraying. It's like you go through all this like chaos and like this cacophony of just disaster in your mind, and then you like come in and you're like, oh no.
I love the idea too of just Andrew's hormone monster Maurice showing up and Andrew immediately being intensely embarrassed about the entire situation, and he's like, "If you want me to leave, you know what you got to do. You got to rub one out, buddy."
Yep.
And it's like,
Because that's
I
the
mean-
release. That's like what
Yeah.
gets him to go away.
and I mean,
It's the opposite of a genie in a bottle.
Yeah.
You got to rub and he goes inside. Oh boy.
I mean, there definitely is something to be said about the like, the idea of just masturbating and then being like, oh, I can now move on with the rest of my day.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know what that was. Maybe it was just, self gratification for the fact of just basic self maintenance,
Yeah.
and then being like, great, I got that out of my way. I can now go do all the things I
Mhm.
have to today.
Have they shown any of the girl characters masturbating, or is it only the guys?
Yes, they have.
They have
Really?
shown.
Yeah.
Okay,
They
I
do
haven't seen
show
that one.
female characters.
Okay.
I think
especially towards the end of season 2, they
Okay, I
get a
haven't
lot
gotten there
into
yet.
it.
I think the biggest complaint I have with the show is so like one, I don't think it's a tool to like teach anyone anything. So if we
you gonna do?
if we take that
Resident
if we
Evil?
take that off the table and just look at it as like a form of entertainment, I think it's great. But like one of the issues that I have is if we do look at it from the context of it's trying to push something, push an agenda, push a thought, which I mean it definitely is to a certain extent. Did an episode on Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So in the big scheme of things, I don't like the arc that Jesse's character has gone through very much. Because I feel like she was like the most mature, level-headed, down to earth, like she like understood, and then now she's making like crazy irrational decisions, which is probably true. I'm not a female, surprise, in case anyone was wondering out there. So I don't know what that is like. I can associate myself with the male characters in the show and be like, yep, that makes sense. But I don't know if like she would have been that level-headed and down to earth, and then like would have immediately like, and maybe it is just like lashing out, like
Well, you
being
know
like,
what?
I'm gonna steal from this CVS for no reason or this
Alex,
store.
sometimes these things are written and they're not intended for you.
I know.
I mean, they do tie it really strongly to her parents' divorce, and they're
Yeah,
trying to make it
yeah,
seem like it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
a
it's
cause and
connected.
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like when they're doing strong female characters, and then like it's like we're gonna just write that completely off. It was like her character completely changed, and maybe that was the purpose. But I feel like she was like a good like buoy to the entire piece, where it was like everyone else is an idiot.
Mhm.
I've got this whole thing figured out, and now she doesn't. So I mean, I still very much enjoy the character.
So I mean, it's almost as if what I'm hearing you say is that character is going through changes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, this makes sense. Signing off.
But don't you guys feel like overall the female, like I watched recently the episode, I don't know, that character Lola, they really make a lot of fun of her. The kind of like the gravelly voice blonde girl who's like
Yes.
really pushy and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
among the female characters, whenever there's a scene with like Lola and that other popular girl and then Jessie and Missy and whoever, there's a lot of like putting each other down. There's a lot of
We
like,
need more background on that character. I mean, we know like she has like an apartment to herself or whatever. Like she like
she did get
lives by herself.
humanized in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need like more on her
Oh,
so
when she
that
was
way it's
rubbing
not
fronts.
just
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
we need more on her so that way it's not just like ripping into her for no
Exactly,
reason, because we don't know what the
exactly.
background is and all
Right.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that the challenging thing that they bring up when they introduce in the second season was sort of the whole idea of the shame wizard is that there's an intense insecurity
Yeah.
within this character, and you could tell from the fact that she lives by herself in a condo, that there's a lot of neglect as well. And so
She's trying to make that microwave dinner just by thawing it in the faucet in
Yeah.
warm water.
that was very sad.
Yeah.
And so to see kind of those character traits is challenging, because then you kind of see that manifest in a way where she's lashing out. She's very brazen about the things that she's doing. She's almost given complete adult autonomy and carte blanche over her entire life. And it's really now kind of how she wants to lead, how she sort of wants to live, and who she wants to interact with in those moments. And that's hard, because at that age, those decisions are not good.
But don't you feel like the show is like making fun of her for being gross and for being, ridiculous? The laughs are at her expense so much.
I think they are.
I think
she's the easy target.
Yeah.
I think for me it was a little bit of a combination, because it was there kind of provide a foil for Andrew. And I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to make her into a punchline.
Because she's abusive of him, like manipulative at the very least. So from that standpoint, it's tough, because at what point do we say, like, no, this is entertainment and just like a slice of life within the reality of being like an exaggeration of slice of life within being, a teenager or prepubescent or pubescent, boy or girl. So it's tough. I think the realities are, like, people do get made fun of. So
yeah,
for that not to exist might be a disservice, to be like, nope, everything's good here with these people.
Yeah, they're just trying
But no one, I think the problem is there have been no consequences. I think that's what it is.
I think the consequences for her was that, she was really into Andrew, and that she was very happy. And in a sense, she had kind of found family in his family. And because of sort of that abuse, because of how she was treating him, he was not interested anymore. And so he kind of, but again, the way his actions and how he operated, with knowing full well that he was not interested in her in general, but still goes through with a sexual act,
rubbing fronts,
is, I think that's still, it's an interesting way to kind of address that problem of, like, I like you, but at the same time, like, I've got weird puberty urges. And that should almost have been more of the focus of this, is like, how do you check these things? Like, but I think the challenging thing is that at no point in this show are they ever really trying to make the delineation of what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
No,
I agree.
They're trying at some points to say, this is a message, or this is a healthy way to deal with this, or these are common problems that kids are going to have. But they're never saying, like, this is the right thing to do, or this is the wrong thing to do. In a lot of those circumstances and situations, they're not telling you how to do it. They're just simply saying, these are some things that you might run into that potentially might be problems. And so I think that kind of goes along the same lines of the thesis statement that I would give this entire show, which is something they say multiple times in the first episode, is everything is embarrassing.
Yep.
And that for me just kind of really solidified my view for this show, is that every single thing that's in here is going to be embarrassing. It's not going to be right. It's not going to be wrong. Always embarrassing.
No, you're right. Like when Jessie gets her period on the school field trip, like I once got my period on a field trip and didn't know it. And I was walking up a street, and my friend Grace and her boyfriend Nate were behind me, and it was like somewhere in high school. I don't remember, like 9th or 10th grade, pretty early. And I remember Nate came up and was like, "Oh, you have blood on your shorts." And I was like, "What?" And it just, obviously put me right in my head. And we were about to go to like some baseball field, just for like some outdoors field trip to a field, so there were like no bathrooms. And I just remember like sitting by myself in the grass for like hours and just being like in a state of panic, because I didn't know what to do, or,
Just gonna sit here.
Yes.
Hide.
Nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
She was wearing like a 9/11 commemorative flag and like a bunch of...
that's just really funny. That's really funny. And that's the thing. That's why I love this show so much, is that it's just so dark and twisted. And if you take it for what it is, which is just a fucked up show, it's fantastic. I love that.
Sure is. It sure is.
Yeah. I cannot get enough of this show. I like a great example is in season 2 when the hormone monster gets hit by a car, or like that bus multiple times, like the moving trucks.
Yeah.
I had to stop it, and I paused it, and it's ads for Jay's dad's law firm.
Yeah.
I
that
love
hit it.
that running joke about
Yeah.
like, I heard that on a commercial, and it's always a line that's really.
It's like the stuff is so deeply intertwined in the show, and I think that's like, I love the randomness of a lot of the jokes, and I just love that it's like nothing is at face value with the show. It's fantastic.
It reminds me of, so my favorite show, you guys know, is King of the Hill. And there are a lot of episodes that deal with the same exact stuff. So there's one where they come home after a summer being apart, and Joseph, Bobby's best friend, has grown a foot, and his voice has changed. And Bobby is still the same height with the same voice. And it's like all about the jealousy and all that. There's another episode where Connie stays with the Hills for a weekend, gets her period for the first time. Peggy's out, so out of the house, so Hank has to deal with it. So he takes her to the like grocery store, and the episode's called Aisle 8A because it's like the aisle he'd never been down, you know, and it's all about him like being able to figure it out. So, but I think that show handles it better because to me, the characters on that show are much more three-dimensional and have a lot of detail to them. Whereas I feel like these characters in Big Mouth, and maybe it's because it's only 2 seasons, but they don't have quite that depth.
I think it's like a pedal to the metal farce. This show. And I mean, look no further than the ghost of Duke Ellington.
Oh, I do like him.
Oh, so funny.
Yeah.
So funny.
Is that Jordan Peele? Who did it?
Yes. Yeah. It's so funny. I just love that it's just like this like drug-addled like ghost that's like, I made a lot of bad decisions.
Yeah. I mean, we have voice casts from Nick Kroll, John Mulaney, Jesse Klein, Jason Mantzoukas, Jenny Slate, Fred Armisen, Maya Rudolph, Jordan Peele. I mean, this is...
Yeah.
And some of those, like I hear voices now, and then I have to go look up on Wikipedia, like
Kristen
John.
Bell's the pillow.
Who is
Kristen Bell? Yeah.
And
yeah, that's right.
John Gemberling is a voice, and Neil Casey is a voice. So you get a lot of cool improvisers.
Right.
Zach Woods is one of the socks. Yeah. And also Jack McBrayer is one of the pubic hairs.
And Craig Robinson.
Yeah. So you get so many interesting characters, and it's so many voices that heard out of context really make you kind of pause and then jump to an IMDb page to be like, who was that pubic hair?
And speaking of, Andrew's mom is played by Paula Pell, who's like that really great writer, but she hasn't been on many shows that I know of. So I was really excited to see her, and I think she kills it.
Yeah, I think I don't really like what Nick Kroll does. I don't like his other works, but I love this show. And I don't know if that's just him surrounding himself with the right people for this,
or finding
if
his right subject matter,
or if he found the right subject matter that just fits my interests. I don't know, but I just love it. It's great.
Well, we're going to get into our reviews in a moment. But hey, you listening right now? Yeah, you. Oh boy. Do you have opinions? And you post so many of them on the internet. So we're going to hand this over to longtime listener and friend of the show, Bobby Anthem, for this week's Love It or Hate It. Bobby, take it away.
This week's Love It is titled Puberty Gone Right from Soft Spoken Ghost in September 2017. It says, now, this topic is rarely discussed like it's not a thing, but it is, and many girls and boys feel alone about it. The show not only isn't afraid to talk about it, but it makes it hilarious and normal. The show is rated MA for mature audiences, so expect some adult content. I mean, the whole show does revolve around going through changes. Nick and Andrew are the two main boys who are awkward tweens. Then there's Jay, also a tween with an over-sexualized imagination. And Jessie and Missy are the two main girls. The hormone monster and the hormone monstress guide the opposite sex on their journey through puberty. Add ghosts, a talking Statue of Liberty, and genitals that have eyes, and you can't get more hilarious than that. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Puberty doesn't have to be an uncomfortable topic, and that's what Big Mouth strives to teach. And our Hate It is titled It's Bad from Cashiark in October 2017. It says, it's extremely crude, full of obvious, mostly unfunny jokes. Occasionally, the show will seemingly almost by accident happen upon a mildly funny joke, but this is an uncommon occurrence. The worst part is that none of the characters are remotely likable. I could get over the humor, or lack thereof, if there were at least one character in the show I wanted to see succeed, but alas, they're all terrible. If you don't think the giant walking penises or the word fuck is hilarious, you probably won't like it. 3 out of 10 stars.
Fantastic, as always, Bobby. Thank you so much. I think Isabel might agree with some of the hate it that we had for this.
I do. It's just not my cup of tea, and I can understand like its good qualities, and hearing you guys talk about the good qualities is definitely reminding me of them. And I have to say, like, a lot of times when you mention a bit, I remember it fondly and remember laughing.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's too mean-spirited for me, so I give it a thumbs down.
Oh, so you are not recommending Big Mouth?
No.
You are not recommending.
I recommend King of the Hill.
Fair.
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 Fair enough. All right, Alex, recommend or not recommend? And remember, listeners, if Alex decides, or from Isabel, if she would like to give this the dip, you have the opportunity to give this the dip and erase this from the annals of cartoon history. She's not going to dip it by the fact that she's shaking her head, but she's also not going to recommend this. Alex.
So I love this show. I love it so much. I had not seen it when the first season came out, and when the second season came out, I just immediately started like pounding through all the episodes. I was really pounding those episodes, guys. Just day in, morning, noon, and night. I was enjoying myself while enjoying them.
To completion.
To completion. That's exactly right. So I would definitely give this a thumb way up. It could be in an orifice or it could not be. You know, it just depends on whatever you're interested in. But I definitely highly endorse this show. I think there's so many nuanced jokes to it. I think it's fantastic.
I'm going to also recommend Big Mouth. I feel that this is one of those rare kind of unique gems that is able to handle a topic that is as touchy and as complicated as puberty with levity, with crassness. I love the fact that they also even break the fourth wall at the end of the first season with Maurice kind of looking at you and saying simply like, we wouldn't have been able to tackle this if this was a live show.
Mm-hmm.
How creepy would that have been if this was something
Oh my
of that
God.
case? Like, we had to do this in an animated version.
Like the Korean spa episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no possible way that you could have this dialogue, or at least begin to initiate the dialogue similar to the one that we've had tonight, without this being in an actual animated form. Otherwise, we would all be locked up.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, I was shocked when there was like the nudity
Me
of the
too.
characters.
Oh, yeah,
I was like,
Me too.
how is this even a thing that they can do?
I was like, I
But
don't like this.
Cartoon is cartoon, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah, I would go as far to say that I think it's one of my favorite cartoons. I know.
Whoa.
Impressive, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. I really enjoy it that much.
No.
I normally don't laugh that much during cartoons, and this one really gets me.
I'll also say, I think one of the reasons that I love this so much is I really love hearing people's childhood stories, similar to what we've talked about tonight. So that's, if anybody's listening and they're just like, why did they talk so much about them as kids? It's 100% why. I love hearing those stories. I think there's something that's always relatable and very compelling about what other people's trials and tribulations when they were growing up, and sort of what their process and mental state was during that time. Again, sort of the obsessions and compulsions that we talked about this evening. I think those things are wildly entertaining and very fascinating to help you get to know a person.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you guys sharing all of your stories with me tonight.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Super fun.
So we're now at the end of our episode. So Isabel Galbraith, thank you so much for being here. Alex Beard, thank you so much for being here. Isabel, anything that you would like to plug, and where could the people potentially find you on social media?
On social media, I'm on Instagram at, I guess, isabel.galbraith. And I have a few performances coming up in November and December at Washington Improv Theater, but it's with various groups. So it'd be hard to figure that out.
Well,
But
I'll put a link to
Okay.
your profile on the WIT page.
they took it
within the show
down.
notes.
They took it down after I left Madeline.
Okay.
Really fast, I have to say. But yeah. And then I'm also going to be doing some stand up in the future. So if you see me, on an open
Nice.
mic night list, come check it out.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Alex, anything that you're up to? It is November 19th. Anything that you have going on in the future?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I can get out of this cage that you have me trapped in your basement. That's like priority number one.
What are you going to do?
What are you gonna do?
I need to get out of here. You can find me.
Alex.
Someone help. This is a call for help, please.
It's been a call for help all episode.
Yep.
buddy.
You can find me at Mr. Alex Beard, pretty much all the various social media sites. Feel free, search me, maybe friend me, maybe become friends with me. And you can also see me performing at the Washington Improv Theater with our dear friend here, Mr. Sean Ellis.
Boy. Before we get into my plugs, you heard him on this week's show. Our friend, we love him, Bobby Anthem. You can hear him on his paranormal podcast, Inhuman Experience. Find them on Twitter at IEXP_podcast. You can also find their episodes on Spreaker and SoundCloud. He's also the occasional third co-host on the THT Movie Review Podcast, which broadcasts every Saturday night at 11:30 Eastern Standard on Mixlr. You can also find him on Twitter at Bobby Anthem. Send him a message, show him some love. He is simply the best. And we've also been able to, as of November 1st, yes, 18 days ago, we accomplished our task of getting Bobby Anthem animated in the style of Bob's Burgers. So we love Bobby for that. So thank you, Bobby, for everything you do. As for me, I perform with a group that's called Nox. That's NOX exclamation point. We perform with Washington Improv Theater. You can find tickets and times with dc.org. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sean Paul Ellis. Hey, want to support us? Tell a friend. Review us on iTunes. I know it's super boring. It actually really helps. Did you also know that I write suggestions in all of our show notes of what you can put in iTunes? They're also all really terrible, so go and read them. You can copy paste. I'm giving you the answers to the test, gang. You can chat us up on Twitter at Morning Tunes. Check us out on IG and Facebook at Saturday Morning Cartoons. Remember, that is always morning with a U. You can find all of these links that we have on our link tree, which is in the bio for all of our social media sites. You can listen to us typically on the first and third Monday of every month on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever fine podcasts are sold. Want to send us an email? SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to everything in Netflix November. We are going to be back December 3rd for our holiday episodes. So stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for listening. Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.